Welcome to Story Medicine. I'm Joe Summerfield. For over 20 years, I have been working to better understand and support people in navigating the human experience. I've come to believe that stories are encoded with the collective wisdom of all who have come before us, that they bring us into connection with the collective unconscious and contain treasure waiting to be decoded. This podcast explores traditional tales through that lens. Each episode offers a story told in full, an exploration of the medicine it may carry, and practices to help you integrate that medicine. Today's story comes from ancient Sumer, carved into clay tablets nearly 4,000 years ago. It's called The Descent of Inanna. Of all the stories I've encountered in preparing this podcast, this one might be the oldest, and yet it speaks directly to moments that we still face. The voluntary descent into darkness, the stripping away of who we thought we were, and what can only be discovered through complete dissolution and return. Let's begin. Part 1. The story. From the great above, Inanna set her mind on the great below. The Queen of Heaven, she who wore the crown of stars, she who ruled love and war and the morning sky, Inanna abandoned the celestial realm, abandoned the earthly world she would visit, and turned her face towards the underworld itself, towards the land of the dead, towards the great below. She adorned herself with the 7 divine powers. Upon her head she placed a turban, the headgear of the open country. Upon her forehead a wig of fine workmanship. Around her neck she hung small lapis lazuli beads that caught the light. Upon her breast she placed twin egg-shaped beads. Her body covered with the parlour dress, the garment of her ladyship. Upon her eyes she placed dark kohl, adornments meant to draw others to her. Across her breast she wore a jewelled pectoral. Upon her hand she placed a golden ring, and in her hands she held the lapis lazuli measuring rod and measuring line, the instruments of just rule. Thus adorned in all her power, Inanna walked towards the underworld. Before she descended, she spoke to Ninshubor, her faithful minister. "Listen well," she said. "When I have entered the land below, if I do not return within 3 days and 3 nights, you must do this. Make lament for me on the ruined mounds. Beat the drum for me in the sanctuaries. Go to the temples of the gods. Tear at yourself as the grieving do. Clothe yourself in rags. First, go to Enlil's house and beg him to save me. And if he refuses, go to Nanna's temple and plead there. But if both refuse you, go to Enki, the wise one. He knows the food of life and the water of life, and he will know what to do." Ninshubor bowed her head. "I will not forget," she promised. And so Inanna descended. She arrived at the palace called Ganza, the throne room of the underworld. She pounded on the door, and she shouted at the gate, "Open up! I am Inanna, and I am alone, and I wish to enter." Neti, the chief doorman of the underworld, came to the gate. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Inanna, travelling to the east." "If you are Inanna of the great above, why have you come to the land of no return? Why have you set your heart on the road whose travellers never come back?" "My sister's husband is dead," Inanna replied. "Gugalana, the bull of heaven, husband of Ereshkigal. I have come to attend his funeral rites." Neti bowed and left her at the gate. He went to his mistress and told her who waited outside. "It is Inanna," he said, "your sister, and she has arrived at the palace of Ganza." When Ereshkigal, queen of the dead, heard that her sister had come, she did not welcome her. She slapped the side of her thigh in anger. She bit her lip. She spoke coldly to Neti. "Let the 7 gates of the underworld be bolted shut. Then open each door separately, and as she enters, strip from her each divine power she wears. These are the rights of the underworld. Even she must submit to them." Neti did as his mistress commanded. At the first gate he opened the door and said, "Come, Inanna, enter." But as she crossed the threshold, he removed the turban from her head. "What is this?" Inanna demanded. "Be satisfied, Inanna. The rites of the underworld are being fulfilled. You must not question them." At the second gate he removed the lapis lazuli beads from her neck. "What is this?" "Be satisfied, Inanna. These are the rites of the underworld." At the third gate, the twin egg-shaped beads were taken from her breast. At the fourth gate, the jeweled pectoral was removed. At the fifth gate, the golden ring was pulled from her hand. At the sixth gate, the measuring rod and measuring line, her instruments of justice, were taken away. At the seventh gate, the parlour dress, the very garment of her power, was stripped from her body. And so Inanna entered the throne room of the underworld naked, crouched low, with nothing. There sat Ereshkigal upon the throne of the dead. Before her stood the 7 judges of the underworld, the Anuna. And Inanna, even naked and powerless as she was, even stripped of everything, tried to approach the throne. She tried to make her sister rise. She tried to take the throne for herself. But the judges would not allow it. They looked at her. It was the look of death. They spoke to her. It was the speech of anger. They shouted at her. It was the shout of heavy guilt. The Queen of Heaven was turned into a corpse then and there, and the corpse was hung on a hook on the wall. 3 days and 3 nights passed. Above in the world of light, Ninshubor waited. When her mistress did not return, she did exactly what she had been commanded. She dressed in rags, she tore at her face, she beat the drum in lamentation. She went to Enlil's temple and begged him to save Inanna, but Enlil turned away. "She craved the great above, and she craved the great below," he said. "She knew the price. Who descends into that place and expects to return?" Ninshubor went to Nanna's temple, but the moon god also refused. "She knew what she desired," he said. "The powers of the underworld must be honored." Finally, Ninshubor came to the temple of Enki, the god of wisdom and waters. She wept before him. "Don't let your daughter be killed in the underworld," she pleaded. "Don't let your precious metal be mixed with the dirt of that place." Enki listened, and Enki was troubled. "What has my daughter done?" he said. "What has Inanna done? She has me worried." From beneath the tip of his fingernail, Enki created 2 beings, tiny, neither male nor female, creatures that could slip through the cracks of the world. To one he gave the food of life. To the other he gave the water of life, and he sent them with instructions. "Go to the underworld," he told them. "Slip past the gates like flies, like phantoms. You will find Ereshkigal in the throes of grief, crying out in pain over her lost children, her body uncovered and uncared for. When she cries, 'Oh, my heart,' you say, 'You are troubled, our mistress, oh, your heart.' When she cries, 'Oh, my liver,' you say, 'You are troubled, our mistress, oh, your liver.' Mirror her pain. She will ask who you are. Then she will offer you gifts, rivers of water, fields of grain. Refuse them all. Say only this: 'Give us the corpse that hangs on the hook.' She will give it to you. Then sprinkle upon it the food of life and the water of life. Thus Inanna will arise." The 2 creatures did exactly as Enki commanded. They slipped into the underworld like shadows. They found Ereshkigal writhing in her pain, crying out her grief. And when they witnessed her suffering with compassion, when they echoed her anguish back to her, something in the dark queen softened. She offered them water. They refused. She offered them grain. They refused. "Then what do you want?" she asked. "Give us the corpse that hangs on the hook," they said. Ereshkigal paused. "That is your queen," she said. "Whether it is our king or our queen," they replied, Give it to us." And so they were given the corpse. One sprinkled the food of life upon it, and the other sprinkled the water of life, and Inanna arose. But as Inanna prepared to leave the underworld, the judges seized her. "Whoever has ascended from the underworld unscathed," they demanded. "If Inanna is to leave, she must provide a substitute." And so Inanna ascended, but she did not ascend alone. Demons followed her, gala demons, who knew no food, who drink no water, who accept no offerings, who never tire. They tore wives from husbands' arms, children from their parents' knees. They came to take someone back. First they came to Ninshubor, who threw herself at Inanna's feet, still dressed in rags of mourning. "Take her," the demons said. But Inanna refused. "This one saved my life. I will not give her to you." They travelled on. They came to 2 more of Inanna's loyal servants, each one prostrate with grief, and each time Inanna refused to give them up. Finally they arrived at the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba, and there sat Dumuzi, Inanna's husband, dressed in magnificent robes, seated upon a throne, playing his flute as though nothing had happened. He hadn't mourned, he hadn't torn his clothes, he had simply taken her place. Inanna looked at him, and it was the look of death. She spoke to him, it was the speech of anger. "How much longer will you sit there unchanged?" she said. "How much longer do you think you can live as though nothing happened? Take him away." And holy Inanna gave Dumuzi the shepherd into the hands of the demons. Dumuzi cried out. He pleaded with Utu, the sun god, his brother-in-law. "Turn my hands to serpent hands, turn my feet into serpent feet, let me escape." And Utu, taking pity, transformed him, and he fled. But though he fled in serpent form, he could not escape the price that had been named. The substitution had been made. In the end, a bargain was struck. Dumuzi would spend half the year in the underworld, and his sister would take his place for the other half. And thus was born the first turning of the seasons, the dying time and the time of return, the descent into the darkness and the emergence into light, over and over again. Holy Ereshkigal, sweet is your praise. Part 2. The Medicine. Let's explore the medicine that this story may carry. This is perhaps the oldest recorded story of descent and return, and it is remarkable how precisely it maps the psychological journey that we must still make when life demands transformation. What I want to do is look at several layers: the pattern itself, what's actually happening at each stage, and why this particular story has survived 4,000 years to reach us today. The voluntary descent. The story begins with something crucial. Inanna chooses to descend. From the great above, she set her mind on the great below. This isn't something that happens to her, she initiates it. She's the Queen of Heaven, ruling from the heights of consciousness, of success, of achievement, and she voluntarily turns towards the underworld. We might say that she's turning towards the unconscious, towards the shadow, towards everything that's beneath awareness. But I think the story's even more specific than that. There are times in life when you can feel something calling you downward, into grief, into a necessary ending, into a letting go of something, some part of us, into territory that you have been avoiding. Descent isn't failure. It's what wholeness requires. Notice that she gives the funeral of her sister's husband as her reason for descending. And perhaps that's part of it. Perhaps that's what she tells herself, what she tells the gatekeeper. But Enlil later says something revealing. She has craved the great above, and she craved the great below. She already ruled heaven and earth, but she craved the underworld too. She wanted to know the depths, perhaps even to rule there as well. Sometimes our descents begin with a reasonable story. I'm just going to process this grief or explore this shadow material. But underneath, there's often a deeper craving, a soul-level pull towards what's been hidden. The story honors both, the surface reason and the deeper truth. The 7 gates. Now here's where the story becomes very precise. 7 gates, 7 divine powers, 7 strippings. At each gate something is removed: the turban, her authority; the jewelry, her adornment; the pectoral, her magnetism, her allure; the measuring rod and line, her capacity for judgment, for determining what's right or wrong; the parlour dress, the very garment of her office, her social role. She enters the throne room naked and crouched low. What the story is showing us is that transformation requires the removal of everything we've used to construct identity, not as a punishment, as a necessity. You can't die to who you were whilst still clutching to the symbols of that self. The underworld won't allow it. Its gates only open if you are willing to be stripped. I've found that this pattern shows up wherever we face genuine transformation. The dismantling of a belief system that we have built our lives upon. Life asks, will you let this go? Will you cross the threshold? And if we say yes, we find there's another gate, another stripping, until finally we arrive at the throne room with nothing at all. The last grab for control. But here's where the story reveals something profound about resistance. Inanna has descended voluntarily. She's been stripped of everything at 7 gates, and she arrives naked, crouched low, and powerless. And even then, even after all that surrender, she tries to take the throne. She tries to make her sister rise and claim rulership of the underworld for herself. This is extraordinary medicine. Even after the voluntary descent, even after being stripped of everything, the ego makes one last attempt to be in control. All right, I've done the work, I've let everything go, now surely I get to direct what happens next. And the underworld says no, you must die completely. I think this speaks to something many of us experience in transformation. We consent to the process, we allow a stripping away, but underneath we are still trying to manage the outcome. We are still descending strategically, still surrendering with conditions, still holding on to frameworks of our understanding and belief. Dying with an escape plan. We think if we do the descent correctly, we will emerge in a position of power. The story says that sometimes what's required is complete annihilation, not strategic surrender, but actual death. The breakdown, the ego dissolution, the moment when all of our clever plans and secret control mechanisms are utterly destroyed. This isn't failure. This is what transformation actually requires when we won't fully let go. Death and hanging. Inanna is turned into a corpse and hung on a hook for 3 days and 3 nights. This is the center of the story, the complete ego death. The utter dissolution. In ancient initiation rites, in the great wisdom traditions, there is often this period, 3 days, a threshold time, where the old self is completely gone and the new self hasn't yet emerged. It's the space in between, the void, what mystics might call the dark night, what depth psychology might call the encounter with annihilation. The story doesn't say that Inanna experiences this as transcendent. She's a corpse, she's hanging on a hook. This is death, and death is death. There is nothing spiritual or comfortable about it. And yet, this is where the transformation happens. In the complete letting go that we wouldn't choose, that gets chosen for us when we exhaust all other options. Ereshkigal, the Dark Sister. Now let's look at Ereshkigal because she is essential medicine. She is Inanna's sister, queen of the underworld, and she's in pain. She is writhing and crying out, uncovered, uncared for. She's everything that Inanna, up in her celestial realm, hasn't had to feel. Jung might call this the shadow, the rejected, exiled parts of ourselves. But we can be more specific than that. Ereshkigal is the grief that we haven't allowed, the rage that we have kept hidden, the parts of our experience that don't fit the story that we are trying to live. She is the sister we didn't know we had, ruling in the depths whilst we reign in the heights. And this is profound. When Enki's creatures come, they don't try to fix Ereshkigal. They don't try to cheer her up or solve her pain. They witness it. They echo it back to her. You are troubled, our mistress, O your heart. You are troubled, O mistress, O your liver. This is the compassionate witnessing of what's been in the dark. Not the analysing, not the fixing, not the spiritual bypassing, just the recognition. I see your pain, I acknowledge it, you are troubled. And it's only through this, through somebody or something finally bearing witness to the pain that's been hidden, that Ereshkigal can release Inanna. The transformation comes through the acknowledgement, not the denial of what's been in the dark. The necessity of substitution. When Inanna rises, the judges of the underworld say that she must provide a substitute. Somebody must take her place. This is often where people struggle with the story. It seems harsh, but I think it's pointing to something true. You can't return from genuine transformation and simply resume your old life. Something must die and stay dead. Something must be surrendered. You must pay for your return with what needs to remain in the depths. When Inanna finds Dumuzi sitting on her throne, unchanged, still playing his music as if nothing happened, she gives up on him. He hasn't done the work. He hasn't made the descent. And she knows now, with the clarity that comes from having died, that their relationship as it was cannot continue. This is not cruelty. It's the clear seeing that transformation brings. What you could tolerate before, you can no longer tolerate. What seemed important before, you now see differently. The parts of your life that haven't transformed with you, the relationships, the roles, the patterns that remain unchanged whilst you've died and returned, these cannot simply continue as if nothing happened. There is a cost to awakening. The substitution isn't optional. Something stays in the underworld so that you can return to the upper world changed. The seasonal cycle. The story resolves with Dumuzi spending half the year in the underworld and his sister taking the other half. This is how the Sumerians understood the changing seasons, the dying time of the winter, the returning life of spring. Death and return, descent and ascent, over and over. And this is, I think, some of the deepest medicine. The descent isn't a one-time event, it's a pattern that repeats. Life will call you down again. There will be other gates, other strippings, other deaths. The journey of wholeness is not linear, it's cyclical. We go down, we come back, we integrate what we've learnt. We live for a time in the upper world, and then, when it's needed, we descend again. This is the rhythm of being human. It is not constant ascent, it is not perpetual light, but a turning of the seasons. The time above and the time below. The expansion and the contraction, the living and the dying, and the living again. Why this story now? I believe this story endures because it maps something essential about being human. We are just beings who must periodically die to be reborn. We must face our shadow sister. We must allow ourselves to be stripped of our defences and our identities and our notions. We must release our attempts at control. We must hang in the darkness, not knowing if we'll return. This speaks to anyone in deep transition, the ending of what was before the beginning of what's next. It speaks to the times when life strips you of everything that you have used to define yourself. It speaks to the necessity of complete surrender, not strategic descent. The story doesn't promise that descent is easy or comfortable, but it does promise this. If you make the journey, if you allow the stripping, if you die completely, there is a return. Not to who you were, but to someone more whole. Someone who has integrated both the heights and the depths. Someone who knows the full territory of being human. Part 3. Integration Practices. Here are 4 practices to help you integrate this story's medicine. First practice, inventory of the 7 powers. Inanna was stripped of the 7 divine powers at the 7 gates. Take 20 minutes this week to write out your own 7 powers, the things you use to construct identity and navigate the world. What are you wearing? Not literally, but metaphorically. What is your turban of authority, your job title, your role, your status? What are your beads and jewellery, the ways you adorn yourself to be seen? What's your pectoral, your charm, your attractiveness, your performance? And what's your measuring rod, your capacity to judge, to be right, to determine what's correct? List all 7 and be honest. These aren't bad things. Inanna wore them because they were genuinely divine powers. But the question is, if you were required to surrender them at a gate, which ones would you most resist releasing? Perhaps there the work lies. That's what the underworld will eventually ask you to set down. Second practice, notice the last grab for control. Inanna tried to take the throne even after being completely stripped. This practice asks, where are you still trying to control your transformation? Sit quietly for 15 minutes and ask yourself, what descent am I in right now? What is being stripped away of my sense of self, identity, my structures of belief, my mechanisms of survival? And underneath my consent to the process, where am I still trying to direct the outcome? Where am I descending strategically, rather than surrendering completely? Write down the ways where you are still reaching for the throne, the backup plans, the secret ways that you think that you will emerge in control, the things that you are not quite ready to let go of, the conditions that you've placed on your surrender. Just notice them. Just acknowledge, even naked and powerless, I am still trying to claim the throne. Sometimes naming this is what allows for the final dissolution to happen. Third practice, witnessing the dark sister. Ereshkigal was not saved by somebody fixing her pain, but by somebody finally witnessing it. For this practice, I want you to spend some time with whatever part of yourself you have exiled, the part that's in the dark, uncovered and crying out. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed and close your eyes. Ask yourself, what part of me is in pain that I haven't wanted to look at? What feeling have I been keeping in the underworld? It might be grief, rage, despair, loneliness, or shame. You will know what it is. Don't try to fix it, simply witness it. As Enki's creatures did, echo it back. You are troubled, O my heart. You are troubled, O my liver. Spend at least 10 minutes just bearing compassionate witness to what's been in the dark. Notice what happens when you stop trying to make it go away. When you finish this practice, have a good shake and go for a walk or speak to a friend. Fourth practice, the question of substitution. When Inanna returned, she couldn't take back her old life unchanged. Something had to stay in the underworld. Take your journal and explore these questions. If you were to undergo a complete transformation, if everything that you think you are was stripped away and you died to your old self, what would have to stay dead when you returned? What pattern? What version of yourself? What strategies would you not be able to carry back with you? And here's the harder question. What are you trying to bring back that needs to remain in the depths? What Dumuzi sits on your throne, unchanged, acting as if nothing happened, that you know you must give up but haven't yet? This isn't about making anything happen. It's about honest acknowledgement. Sometimes we know we're in a descent. We know transformation is happening, but we're trying to keep one foot in the old life. We're trying not to make the substitution. We're trying to hold on to 2 conflicting aspects. The story asks, what are you still clutching that the underworld is asking you to release? Write freely for 20 minutes and see what emerges. The medicine doesn't come from understanding these patterns intellectually. It comes from the practices, from allowing the transformation to happen in your body, in your honest acknowledgement of where you are, in your willingness to witness what's been kept in the dark, and in your capacity to finally release your grip on the throne. The wisdom of these old stories waits patiently. I hope this one's medicine found you where you need it. If this podcast speaks to you, I'd be grateful if you would subscribe or leave a review. It helps others to find these stories when they need them. Thank you for listening to Story Medicine. I am Joe Summerfield. Until next time.